Chalk Talk is brought to you by Isolite, the emergency lighting experts. Stay educated, my friends.
Every problem is an opportunity in disguise. That's a quote by John Adams, and I think it relates to today's Chalk Talk and also Isolite as a whole and kind of our motto on how we go to market and support you all. Thank you. I'm Western Regional Sales Manager Greg Keel, along with Eastern Regional Sales Manager Matt Bird, and we appreciate you joining us for our April Chalk Talk. This session is jam-packed. Our Director of Product Development, Evan Ackman, is hosting as always. I believe this is Chalk Talk number 40 in our series. Evan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I went and handed it off to him quickly because I know we've got 15 minutes and he's got a lot of exciting information to pass along, which I know I'm super excited about and anticipated this one. It's a long time coming. So Evan, take it away.
I'm really just surprised that it's Chalk Talk 40 already. It feels like just yesterday we started these things, but I guess time flies when you're having fun. Thank you, Western Regional Sales Manager Greg Keel. I appreciate that introduction, and I certainly appreciate everyone joining us here on this, at least in Philadelphia, rather frigid spring morning. We do have a jam-packed presentation here today. We actually have not one, but two product announcements. It's kind of hard to bury the lead when you've got an agenda slide. So this is related to inverters. We're going to start today with a little bit of a review of the E3 Mac. We're going to do that superbly quickly, though. It's one quick slide. I want to talk a little bit about some of the limitations that have presented themselves with that product over the years. And then I want to talk about the new product, the E3 Max, which addresses some of those limitations. I won't get into the agenda items here. We're going to go through it in a lot of detail. And then we have a sort of a one more thing, Steve Jobs-esque announcement at the end for even another new product. So this is jam-packed. I suspect there will be questions. Throw them in the chat, throw them in the Q&A. We'll stick around for probably a little bit longer than usual at the end of this presentation today to answer them. And so without further ado, I'm hoping that you know absolutely everything that's on this slide, right? This is related to our E3 Mac modular inverter series. And, you know, we created this line of products, oh God, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, maybe at this point. We certainly started working on it about 10 years ago. And today, even today, it still is industry leading in its technology. The crest factor, the ability to get a lot of peak current out as compared to the nominal load so that all loads always turn on, our web monitoring, the fact that that really reduces maintenance costs down to near zero because it sort of changes the world from that pull-based management into that push-based management. We've spent many a Chalk Talk discussing all of these features and benefits. Obviously, this is the big iron in our product line. So it has 1, 2, split, and 3-phase offerings. And today it's available in 1 to 18 kVA products. And that sort of leads us into some of the limitations that have presented themselves. And I guess if I were going to summarize this and sort of pull the curtain back on the engineering process for these devices, so much of how an inverter product line really looks, both in terms of sort of the shape and size, as well as the capacities that it's capable of sort of dealing with, it all comes down to the selection of batteries inside of it. And so when we started the design and development on this product 10 years ago, the batteries that were out there were somewhat limited, and it kind of forced us into this form factor and shape. And so the limitations that, you know, we've recognized and we've heard from you guys out there in the field is first and foremost, power capacity. 18 kVA is good. Obviously, bigger is going to be better. So now all of a sudden, that's where the battery capacity thing really starts to sort of eat us alive, right? We've got relatively low battery capacity, sort of at this like 80 amp hour battery. It means we can't actually get to more power capacity unless we go into crazy amounts of floor space, which is the other limitation that we've really identified and you've helped us identify over the last couple of years. Because of the shape and size of the battery, the only way that we can get a lot more power is to go to a lot larger of a footprint. And we know that the floor space is really what we need to be optimizing for. And so the strategy that we took 10 years ago maybe hasn't kept up with the times in all the ways that we would like it to. And so we recognized that in order to address these issues, we really needed something new. And what is new here, and you saw it on the agenda slide, which kind of ruined the lead for me, is the E3 Max inverter system. And this is going to be sort of a question of like, why does this have a new name? But we're going to call this new name and same great features. In full disclosure, a lot of the electronics inside of this are at least similar to the E3 Mac product line. So all of those great features that you come to expect from two or three slides ago, that full offering, single, 2, 3 split phase offering, all the breaker outputs, triple arms, that web monitor and BMS integration, that industry leading crest factor, that hyper fast transfer over to battery power, that is all still there. And so that sort of brings us to the question, why did you change the name? Well, obviously, we've changed the size and form factor of this device, this really family of devices. And so we thought that naming it differently was appropriate. That sort of keeps us clear on, for places where we have overlap in sizes, which you'll see on the next slide, you'll know which cabinet you're going to get. And so we'll talk about what's going to happen with the E3 Mac long-term here at the end of this presentation. But this is a new family. It's a new product line. It's built sort of fundamentally differently, even though it uses some commonality in the electronics design. But let's dig in. So the first problem that we mentioned a couple slides ago was power handling capability. Our current line of products on the 3-phase side tops out at 18 kVA. It's lower than that for the single and 2 and split phase options. We're delighted to report that. So single phase now is going to go up to 17 kVA. Our 2 and split phase offering is going to go up to 13.3. And the 3-phase offering you can see here goes all the way up to 33 kVA. Now, I should also say that this list isn't final. There's a couple things that we think that we're going to add to this list. We think we can slot some stuff in on some of these gaps here to get a couple more intermediate sizes. That way you're not buying more inverter than you necessarily need. We're still working out a couple of those details, but we know that at the very least, we're going to go here. The other thing that's going to happen is that you'll see this product line sort of move in this direction down into the smaller kVA rated inverters. This sort of takes over at that sort of mid to high power line, and it will sort of fall its way down into some of the smaller products as time goes forward here. So this is pretty exciting. Obviously, the power handling capacity is a lot larger. You're also going to see here, and you saw on the drawings on the previous slides, that we have this like iconography. This indicates whether this is a 2 or 3 cabinet configuration of the new inverter. And so this is what those look like. And I'm delighted to report that this means that we've taken back the lead in the floor space sort of competition in the industry. So our 2 cabinet configuration, which is utilized in those configurations you saw on the previous slide, 53 inches wide, 25 inches deep. The 3 cabinet configuration, which you kind of see tucked behind it there in this imagery, is 79.5 inches wide and 25 inches deep. It's significantly less floor space, even for a lot more capacity. You'll also notice that there's no single cabinet configuration for these inverters today. That might change in the future, but right now, basically, what you have there is the left cabinet is dedicated for sort of the breakers and all the inverter modules, and the right cabinet or cabinets is going to be dedicated to all of the batteries that go into this. And that actually creates sort of a more flexible sort of product line for us here. It makes it a little bit easier for a lot of things to happen. First and foremost, we actually get a lot more breaker space. You might say, well, where are those breakers? On the E3 Mac, you can see them right there today. They're actually behind this door right here. So we can hide the breakers behind this dead front so that they're not immediately accessible. That little latch right there just turns and opens. And now for all of these products, you can get up to 36 breakers. That's a lot more than we can do today. And we don't have that weird thing where you sort of have this like break and say, well, sometimes you can get 24, sometimes you can get 26, sometimes you can get 12. It's always 36 breakers in all the configurations of the E3 Max. Obviously, that drops down by a factor of 1.5 if you have triple arms, but it's a lot more breaker space for the same size inverters. So that's pretty exciting. The other cool thing is that this entire area behind here, you can see the hinges, opens up and creates a wiring compartment. And that wiring compartment is like, 4.5 to 6.5 feet in the air. So it's at sort of normal standing height for the contractor. So it's a larger wiring enclosure, and it's sort of at a nicer height. So it's easier to get all of the high voltage stuff wired in either from the top here or from the side here. So it makes the contractor's life a lot easier. It also separates the different power domains. So if you see this line right here, all of the mains voltage and high voltage stuff comes in here. All of the low voltage stuff is at the bottom and in the other cabinet. So it's a separation of concerns. And then as you saw in the previous slide, we've totally isolated the top and the bottom, and that bottom space is actually a lot larger. So today we use it for all of the inverter modules, so the big transformers, the big heat sinks and all that stuff. But it actually gives us a little bit more flexibility on terms of doing things that come up as special requests or ETO orders. The one that immediately jumps to my mind is the use of isolation transformers for mixed output voltages. It comes up all the time, sometimes to my chagrin, but it does give us that flexibility without having to go to an additional dedicated transformer cabinet that's next to it. So for those size inverters, or even for some smaller inverters, now we can utilize that additional space at the bottom for some of those more esoteric options that come up in the field. So in terms of availability, I want to just call out very explicitly that the E3 Mac isn't going away, even where there are duplicates in power handling capacity. So like that 8 kVA 3-phase inverter, right? There's an E3 Mac version of that, and now there's an E3 Max version of that. The E3 Mac version is not going away. We can still build it. This is really the reason why we kept these two product lines separate, so that you wouldn't have any ambiguity on what cabinet was going to be delivered for what you ordered. And the electronics are similar enough that it's likely that you're going to be able to deal with sort of migrating naturally between one or the other. If floor space is a concern, if you need more breakers, go with the E3 Max. If you have height restrictions, or if you have a specification that's already written, stick with the E3 Mac. You're still getting the top tier, best of the line inverter. We're going to start quoting these things for you guys next week. 5/1 is what we said is our canned quote date, and they'll be available to ship on 8/1. And that's a very conservative date. Like, for example, we know that we have some jobs that we very sort of specially hand selected that are going to ship in June. We have all the parts for these things coming in now. UL is underway. So if you have an opportunity that needs something a bit sooner, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, get that quote, and we'll be able to sort of fulfill that for you for most things. So if you need it next week, probably not. If you need it in July, we're probably going to be able to say yes to that. But generally, if it's going to be August or later, don't even worry about it. You're going to be okay from that perspective. Now, I do have one more thing, and in a normal timeline, this would have been its own dedicated Chalk Talk. But we've got a busy couple months for Chalk Talks coming up because of product announcements. And so I wanted to just kind of sort of shoehorn this thing in here. And admittedly, this is a sort of a more low-tech solution than we might normally want to apply. We actually have a version of our E3 Mini that we're moving up into the 750 VA realm. That's not ready yet. We're not going to have that ready for a little while. But we did want to have a gap filler. And so we do have the E3X, which is going to fill that gap. Not necessarily just temporarily, but it's a sort of a more low-tech basic inverter for you guys. Has a very basic feature set. It's sort of a value series inverter. 12277 field selectable. It uses a very standard lead calcium battery. You can get some output breakers on it. Dimming and switching outputs are available, and it's relatively inexpensive for that VA rating. And it's also going to be available 5/1. So like I said, this is something that we're really utilizing to fill a gap in our product line. We know that between the E3 and the E3 Mac, we have sort of a gap between 550 VA up to 1,000, and we know that a lot of stuff sort of falls in that sweet spot at 750. This is a way to get to yes. This is already up on the portal, so if you want to go generate your own quote, you can do that. If you want to have us build a quote for you for this product, please don't hesitate to reach out. With that said, in terms of the sales materials, everything's going to be up on the website by 5/1. We're probably going to put it up here on Thursday. I just didn't want any of my thunder to be spoiled by pre-releasing the web pages and the cut sheets, because people do find everything that's posted on our website before I tell them about it. So I did want to wait until I've had a chance to talk everybody through what these things are and why they're there. So the websites and the spec sheets will be up. We have them now if you need them in advance of that. I don't suspect that's going to be the case. The boilerplate specs will be updated for the E3 Max. And then all the marketing assets, some of the pictures that you saw here, they'll all be up on the webpage for that time as well. As a follow-up to this, in addition to what you're normally going to get, which is the video of the presentation and the access to the slides, we're also going to send the dedicated price book page for the E3X. In the interim, you can use the portal or have one of the Daves generate a quote for you, but we'll send out the price book page at follow-up time so that you just have something explicit, even in advance of a price book update, which we have planned for early this summer. With that said, I was only 1 minute over, which is actually pretty good for me as someone who likes to talk. Thank you for joining us. Greg and Matt are on the line. I'm here. We certainly appreciate everything that you guys do for us. So if you want to talk more about the E3 Max, if you want to take an AIA course, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We're happy to support you guys in any way that we can. If you have questions, I would be happy to answer those now. Otherwise, enjoy the end of your April and the beginning of your May. Happy spring, happy weekend, and we'll talk to you next month.